Hey everybody, welcome to the Rugby Report. My name's Dwayne Burkhardt, and holy crap, wow, what a week we just had in rugby, so let's not waste any time, let's get right to it. We will start, as we always do, with the NPC, which requires us to do a little time traveling. Okay, that's ridiculous, that's silly, I won't do that again, I'm sorry. But we're going back in time to the odd game out from round one, which took place this past Wednesday between the Manawatu Turbos and Auckland. The Turbos were hoping for a better outing after their blowout loss to Canterbury on opening night, and to some extent they got it. But as I sadly predicted, Auckland was simply the better team, and as a result, unfortunately the Turbos do start their season 0-2, and they fall to Auckland. The full-time score, Manawatu 18, Auckland 45. But let's get to round two, because it started with an incredible game in Hawke's Bay. Now, I did know, although I did not mention it in last week's podcast, that this was a Ranfurly Shield game. But either way, I thought this was going to be kind of a walk-in-the-park game for the Magpies. And in fairness to me, it was. For the first half. The Magpies moved the ball pretty much at will, and cruised to a 28-6 halftime lead. And incidentally, 3 of those 6 points for Counties came on a 48-meter kick that appeared to clear the upright by about the width of a sheet of paper. But then, after what must have been one of the great halftime speeches of all time by the Counties coaching staff, for the second week in a row, the Counties Manukau Steelers blew my mind. Folks, these are not the Steelers of recent years past. They returned to the field like a team possessed. The Steelers' defense, which couldn't stop the Magpies to save their lives in the first half, held them to just 5 points in the second half. And on offense, when they were a man down, they still managed to score, and to score, and score, coming all the way back and making it a 1-point game with less than 2 minutes to play. And they were going to get the ball back, which they then knocked on, so the Magpies escaped with the win, and they keep the Ranfurly Shield. The full-time score was a frankly heart-stopping 33-32 to the Magpies, and I needed oxygen. On Saturday, we started in Otago, in what is literally my favorite sports venue on the planet, Forsyth Bar Stadium. Here's one of many pictures of me enjoying a game there. Otago returned home this week after a hard loss to Counties to face the Tasman Mako, who frankly had to work a bit harder than anyone thought they would to beat the Southland Stags in their home opener. So how did this game go? Well, early on it was all Otago. They jumped out to an 8-0 lead, but with only a few minutes left before halftime, Tasman quickly tied the game, and then as the halftime hooter went off, Otago retook the lead 11-8. Otago then started the second half with a massive 51-meter penalty kick by Cam Miller, after which there was just a lot of kicking the ball back and forth for a while, including yet another massive kick by Miller, and suddenly it was 17-8 Otago. Thomas Umaga Jensen added a breakaway try, and then the Otago defense went on a roughly 10-minute-long goal line defense. Before one man down, they finally gave up a try to the Mako. Miller then missed a couple of kicks, and after that he made the one that counted. Tasman had a chance to steal the game right at the end, but the Otago defense did not yield. The full-time score, Otago 25, Tasman 19. Next up, Northland got to go home with a frankly unexpected 1-0 record to face the defending champion Waikato squad. The Taniwha scored early, moved the ball well, and held their lead throughout the low-scoring first half. But Damian McKenzie and the rest of the Moo-Moos would not be denied, as they held the Taniwha scoreless in the second half and did just enough to come from behind and secure the win, including holding off a last-minute drive by the Taniwha. The full-time score was Northland 10, Waikato 16. But the Moo-Moos have a bit of an early season problem, in my opinion, because frankly, if Damian McKenzie didn't play in this game, I don't think they win it. And sooner or later, that's going to be a problem in Hamilton. Finally, on Saturday, we went down to Christchurch as Canterbury, fresh off their blowout win over the Turbos, came home to face a Wellington Lions team that did surprisingly well in round one. Well, maybe not that surprising when you add in the fact that TJ and Julian were on the starting roster, but anyway, how did this game go? Well, for the first 58 minutes of the game, Wellington looked good. They even held the lead for a significant amount of the first half, but an interception returned for a try halfway through the second half opened the floodgates, and Canterbury went on a 28-0 run and turned the game into a statement. And the statement was, we are the team to beat this year. Folks, I know we're only 2 weeks into the season, and I know there's a lot of rugby yet to be played, but Canterbury has now ended up blowing the doors off of their first two opponents this season. And right now, it looks like the road to the NPC Championship is going to go through Christchurch. Full-time score, Canterbury 43, Wellington 10. Sunday's rugby action began in Tauranga, a town which is, incidentally, home of the best breakfast in all of New Zealand. This is true. It's called the Dry Dock Cafe, and if you visit the area, you really, really do have to go there. Oh my God, the food is amazing. And if you were there, after an amazing breakfast, you could then walk along the shoreline and then head over to the stadium to watch the Bay of Plenty Steamers, who looked absolutely incredible in their narrow loss to the Lions in round one, take on the Taranaki Bulls, who also narrowly lost what was at least a little bit of a shocker to the Northland Taniwha. It was a gorgeous day for rugby in Tauranga, if you happen to be the Steamers. Bay of Plenty dominated this game, start to finish, on both sides of the ball. They held the Bulls to only 2 penalty kicks while just plain steamrolling them on offense. The result was, well, it was a good old-fashioned spanking. The full-time score was Steamers 46, Bulls 6. And folks, I gotta say, Bay of Plenty is by far the most fun team to watch so far this year. Their ball movement was once again just flat out amazing. The Steamers are passing the ball to each other so well that it looks like they're sharing a collective consciousness. And this week they matched that high-octane offense with an Iron Curtain defense. They are playing outstanding team rugby right now, and I think that they too are a team to watch. Next up, we head all the way down to Invercargill, where the Southland Stags were hosting Auckland, and once again, the Stags showed up against a team that, on paper, should have been able to drop them like a bad habit. But again, the Stags showed heart, determination, impressive ball movement, and a refusal to lay down or quit, and they almost pulled off what would have been a shocking upset. Full-time score, Southland 23, Auckland 24. The Stags are 0-2, but I'm telling you right now, if they keep playing like this, at some point this season, I don't know where, I don't know when, but they are going to shock someone. And finally, on Sunday, the Manawatu Turbos drove up to North Harbour to see if they could avoid starting their season 0-3, and to say that they were not successful would be a lot like describing the Pacific Ocean as that small pond between San Francisco and Tokyo. Folks, this game needed a mercy rule. North Harbour was relentless on attack, and the Turbos could do absolutely nothing to stop it. The score was 29-7 at the half, and that 7 for Manawatu was a penalty try. And in the second half, well, the game just got out of control. The full-time score was North Harbour 64, Manawatu 14. Now, it is true that the Turbos have started their season this year with a challenging schedule, but they've lost their first 3 games by an average of more than 40 points. And that, as they say, is a problem. Now, before we talk about the week ahead, let's check in on how I'm doing on my predictions. I was 4-3 in round 1, thanks to Auckland's midweek victory over the Turbos, and in round 2, so far, much better. 6-1, and that 1 was the stunner in Dunedin, and frankly, couldn't be happier for Otago, hence the University of Otago shirt today. For the season to date, I am now 10-4. Okay, let's talk about the coming week. First up, as promised, I need to talk about what is technically the last game of round 2, the upcoming midweek contest between Otago and Hawke's Bay. Now, I mentioned this game in my last podcast, and I do have some special thoughts on it. I've been a New Zealand rugby fan for 10 years now, and in that time, I have seen some exciting games, and several of them were between these two teams. In fact, one of the very first NPC matches I ever saw was between these two teams in this stadium. And in the last few minutes of that game, there were 4 tries involving 4 lead changes back and forth between them. It was insane. And it's been my experience since that when these two teams in particular play, records don't matter, stats don't matter, anyone can win, which makes this game really hard to call. Now, on paper, there's no question. The Magpies should win this game. And the truth is, they kind of need a statement win after their first 2 results. But Otago is coming off an impressive win against Tasman, and they're playing at home. Honestly, I'm not going to be surprised by either outcome. And again, the stats say that the Magpies should win this game. But I'm going to go way out on a limb and say, nope, Otago gets the win. Otago gets the win. They upset the Magpies in Dunedin. We'll see, but if it happens, you heard it here first. Round 3 begins with a Friday night matchup between Counties Manukau and Waikato. And this game is also, frankly, harder to predict than I thought it was going to be. The Steelers were impressive in both their home opening win against Otago and their narrow loss in Hawke's Bay last week. And Waikato has frankly not yet showed us the same form that made them the champions in 2021. But with that said, I still think they win this game. Waikato wins. On Saturday, the action starts in Taranaki, where the recently trampled 0-2 Bulls will return home to face the white-hot Canterbury team. A team that has not just won their first 2 games, but has won those games in fairly dramatic fashion. The Bulls are tough, and I think they are better than their record, but against Canterbury, I don't see it. Canterbury wins. Next, we're going to move over to Wellington, where the game will take place in Pororua Park, and for the record, I always think it's fun when teams play games like this in alternate venues. The Lions will be taking on the 1-1 Northland Taniwha, and both teams are sure to be more than just a little bit annoyed by their results last week. So who comes out on top? Well, Northland has frankly outperformed my expectations in the first 2 weeks of the season. But against the Lions? In Wellington? Nope, I just don't see that happening. Lions win. Finally, on Saturday, we go back to North Harbour for what has to be the most aquatically themed match of the year, as the men of the Harbour take on the suddenly struggling Tasman Mako. Now, this is only round 3, so this game is in no way a mathematical must-win game for the Mako. But if they're going to end up as one of the elite teams this year, sooner or later, they're going to need to show it. And frankly, we haven't seen it yet. This is a hard game to call. Harbour played really well in their opening loss to Auckland, and they just beat the snot out of the Turbos in round 2. But can they beat the Mako? You know, if you'd asked me 2 weeks ago, I would have said no. But today, at home, well, once again, I'm going to go out on a little bit of a limb here, and I'm going to say, yes. Yes, they can. North Harbour wins, and Tasman ends up in a bit of a bind. Sunday's rugby action will start with what is not only guaranteed to be the game of the week, it is the game of the season so far, as Auckland will play host to the Bay of Plenty Steamers. Auckland is tough, and Eden Park is a difficult place to come into and win. But I am absolutely blown away by how well the Steamers have been playing this year. In fact, this is the best team play that I've seen in a very, very long time. And if they bring that hyper-efficient offense with them into this game, well, again, I'm going to go on a bit of a limb here. And I'm going to say that Bay of Plenty goes into Eden Park, and they come out with a win. Steamers will win. The second game on Sunday is as near to a local battle as you can get on the South Island, as Southland will play host to Otago. Now, I know Southland's 0-2, but they're better than that record, And frankly, all they need is for a team to come into their game with just a little dismissiveness or overconfidence in order to play the role of spoilers. But I don't think Otago's going to be that team. Otago does have a disadvantage coming into this game in that they'll be playing on only a few days' rest thanks to their midweek game against the Magpies. But in the end, I think they're going to be just too big, too fast, and too good for Southland. Once again, I'm sorry, Stag fans. You and your team deserve better, but not this week. Otago wins. Finally, round 3 ends on Sunday night in Palmerston North, where the Manawatu Turbos will face off against the Magpies. Now, the Turbos will have an advantage in this game in that the Magpies will have also just played that same midweek game that I mentioned a moment ago against Otago, but the Turbos haven't yet shown the ability to stop any offense they've seen this year, and Hawke's Bay can score. So unfortunately, I think the Turbos drop to 0-4 and into a deep hole to dig their way out of this season. Hawke's Bay will win this game. Now let's shift gears entirely and talk about the ridiculously exciting second round of the Rugby Championship, which also took place this weekend. First up, did you see the rematch? Wow! The second game between the Springboks and the All Blacks was one for the ages, a game to put a big star by in the giant vault of great rugby games. The Springboks are a really, really good, deep, talented team. They are massive, they're fast, they're tough, and they were playing in the hardest stadium in the world for another team to come in and beat them in. A stadium where they hadn't lost a game in nearly a decade. But beating the All Blacks twice in a row is hard. The All Blacks took the field in Joburg and finally did what they hadn't been able to do in their last several matches. They did play a cleaner and more organized game, but they won this game for 3 reasons. Pace, pace, and pace. From the opening whistle, they demonstrated that they had learned the biggest lesson from the game in Mbombela, and that was you can't win if you don't have the ball, and you've got to move that ball at the same speed and intensity as the Springboks if you hope to beat them. And they did. In fact, on several occasions, the All Blacks were even more explosive than the Boks, and they just never quit. There were breaks in the game that went their way, there were breaks in the game that went the Springboks' way, and they didn't let either of those things distract them. They stayed focused, they stayed fast, and they completely deserved a frankly amazing upset win. The full-time score, Springboks 23, All Blacks 35. And now, in the final game for this podcast, Argentina got their rematch against Australia, and the Wallabies, well, they got wallop-beat. The Pumas had this game from whistle to whistle. Yeah, there were breaks that went their way, but when you completely blow out a team like this, even if 1 or 2 of your tries was more luck than anything else, it just means that you would have won by 17 instead of 31. The full-time score was Argentina 48, Australia 17. And I don't think there was anything that the Wallabies could have done to win this game. Which is to say that they didn't play badly. They just plain got beat by a team that was really on their game. I also think that losses like this are actually less difficult to bounce back from because, well, they're easy to let go of. That said, it really doesn't get easier for the Wallabies from here. The Rugby Championship takes a break this coming week, so I won't get to talk about the specifics of the next game until our next podcast, but the Wallabies are returning home to face the Springboks. And well, that is not going to be easy. As always, if you want to follow the games up here in the USA, you can watch them all on Flow Sports. And if you're down under, Sky Sports has your ticket. And once again, that's it, folks. Hope you enjoyed the show. Please do subscribe below. And remember, if it involves rugby and pizza, I'm in. See you next time. Who looked absolutely incredible in their narrow loss to the
And that is the first major blooper of the day.
And my first fun voice. Okay, maybe we'll back up to that again. Start Sunday again. If you did go there after an amazing breakfast, you could then walk along the shoreline and then hoad over. You can hoad over like a hoedown, we can hoe down over. We're not going to hoe down over. We're going to hoe down again. Ho dang. Sunday's rugby action began in Tauranga, which is somewhere. It's somewhere in New Zealand. I'm pretty sure it's there. I've been there, so I know it is actually in New Zealand. This is the third time. Take 4. Again, Bay of and Waikato has frankly not yet showed up. Has not yet showed up. Did they not show up? I think they did actually show up to the game. They came to the game. It wasn't that they weren't there at the game. Maybe it was, I don't know. We're going to do the whole frickin' thing again. God. All right. And this game is also, frankly, Howder?
It's harder to predict. It is. It's harder.
I don't even know what the word Howder means. That is a terrible Darth Vader impression. All right. We're going to do this. We can do it. Round 3 begins with a Friday night matchup betweens? No, it doesn't. We're going to do it one more time. And this game is also, frankly, harder. Why is the word harder is a harder word to pronounce? That's what it is. Harder is harder. Harder to predict it is. Yeah, that's actually not. That's actually the way Yoda would speak. I'm not sure. I did not just do that. We're going to edit that out. That is going to be an edit. All right. One more time. Because between words in the same sentence, you do have to keep going. You can't just stop in the middle of a sentence and then not start. Okay. Important tip.